In 1965, the objects, which we call artifacts, that were recovered from the CSS Neuse were brought here to the laboratory for preservation. Generally these objects appear in three forms: metallic, which you see here with the projectile, and then you have an organic material, which is wood, bone, horn, the organic group. And then you have the compound objects, which have more than one. They have wooden handles in some cases, and metal blades. Sometimes this can be bone or horn also. Artifacts recovered from the Neuse were in relatively good condition, considering the fact that they had spent 100 years under the water. Fortunately, this was fresh water. Sand had come in and covered the objects up, covered the entire wreck most of that time. These objects were found in what's known as an anaerobic condition. That's where all the air is removed by the sand, and rusting and oxidation that takes place normally in water wasn't able to occur as rapidly. In spite of the fact that they were under the water for 100 years, when they came up, we were able to preserve these using fairly simple methods. More fragile objects receive different processes than the more sturdy ones. The shell, for instance, a lot of times we were able to just sandblast those. The biggest artifact, I guess, the Neuse itself, required quite a different process because of the fact that it was so big. The cleaning process was extreme. It took a long time to get all the sands out of little cracks and crevices on the vessel. Well, in 1971, the Neuse was beginning to crumble and fall apart, and at that time our lab, including myself, sent several folks up. We studied the different processes that we might use to preserve the Neuse and came up with the idea of replenishing these natural saps and resins with linseed oil. So we made a couple of applications of dilute linseed oil, and finally a 100% solution of linseed oil, and we applied this on the Neuse. And afterwards, after this dried for several months, we went back and we preserved the exposed metal. We literally wrapped a couple of times on each spike and pin that was exposed, just enough to knock off any loose rust. And then we took a stainless steel brush, and then we came back with a material, a zinc coating, and we actually stippled on this zinc coating on almost every spike on the vessel, and there's probably, if I remember correctly, around 32,000. So needless to say, it took several days. The Neuse is such a huge artifact. In fact, it's probably the largest artifact that has ever been recovered in North Carolina history. It's so huge that we couldn't bring it into the laboratory to try to process it there, and we pretty much had to improvise from time to time. We feel like that we have been able to help the Neuse. We've made it last longer, but we don't feel that we've come up with a process that will make it last indefinitely. So now it might become your turn to learn how to preserve an artifact this size so that it may be kept longer and help to preserve North Carolina's rich history.